Newsfirst, Newsline with Faraz Shaukat Ali.
And a very good evening to you and welcome to Newsline Zoom. My guest this evening is somebody who's recovering from testing positive, and he's locked up all on his own in his room, but he's joining us by Zoom. And he's, of course, none other than the veteran politician, former cabinet minister as well, now on the sort of borderline. Let's find out his plight, his position, and how he's feeling. Mr. Chandima, Weerakkody, very good evening to you.
Good evening, Faraz.
And how are you feeling? You are sort of recovering, but how are you feeling?
Well, I'm getting better. I hope I'll be all right very soon.
And you are you still in hospital, or where are you?
I just came home.
And so you're sort of all alone. Everyone's leaving you alone now.
Yeah, I'm supposed to be in isolation, so I'm locked up in a room.
For how long?
I have to be like this for another few days.
Well, I suppose that's a better plight than some people like Azad Salih find themselves in.
Yeah, I hope.
And Hijaz Hezbollah.
Yes, certainly.
Do you think Rishad will ever be left?
To the judiciary to take a decision. I hope the independent judiciary will take the correct decision.
Now, you know, talking about taking decisions and so on, Mr. Weerakkody, before you were unfortunately tested positive for COVID, I heard you say that because you didn't support or you didn't approve the power station deal, I think that's the Pitta deal, wasn't it? That you blamed that for not approving, for losing your portfolio. How true is that? Is that true? Is that my understanding?
More than that particular deal, the right to supply LNG, if it's given exclusively to one party, that's the worst that can happen to Sri Lanka in the future, because our future energy supply is going to be LNG. So if it's given on a platter to one party, our entire nation can be manipulated by the party that has the key to access energy to Sri Lanka. So on that basis, I had my stand. And also the fact that we have discovered LNG in 2 wells out of 4 that we have dug into, which is a very high percentage if you go by international standards. We need internationally reputed investors to come invest into exploration so that we could make use of our LNG. So that was my target, to attract investors. And I was successful as a minister at that time to be able to convince 11 top companies to come for bidding, not for one particular company to be given the tender. They came forward to participate in our bidding process. So the moment such investors hear that the supply is given to one party, no one will put in their money for exploration, because you have to have a market. If whoever who invests in exploration should be able to sell it to Sri Lankan market first. So that's a very, and this trade internationally is a very high, is an industry where a high degree of transparency, zero corrupt policy is exercised. You have to convince such investors of the fact that we are a zero corrupt country in order to attract them, especially in respect of that field.
Yeah.
So I was able to do that. unfortunately, there was a pressure on me to give the supply to a party where we will not be able to attract that particular party for investment. And once again, that was also not following tender process. So I had to say no in the interest of future generations and my country. So that was plainly the main reason at that time.
How easy or not is to showcase Sri Lanka's transparency? I asked that question in the context, in an ambience where we have got issues with the international community, namely through the United Nations, the majority of the United Nations member states. There is a EU delegation that was in Sri Lanka for a few days, looking at the GSP Plus and the way that Sri Lanka is sort of delivering on its promises. So in the light of what else is happening in Sri Lanka, in terms of, I alluded it to you before, people being held on spurious charges, sometimes being held without any charge as of yet. People like Hijaz Hezbollah, the lawyer, people like the former governor Azad Saleh, and if there are cases against them, then they ought to be charged, and their waiting misery should be put out. Do you agree?
Well, all of us have to understand that the law is above all of us. And whether anyone has committed an offense, whether it's a professional or a politician or the poorest man in the remotest village in the country, the law has to be the same for them. And the way in which the justice is done for that particular person and for those who are offended should be seen transparent and satisfactory to the general public in this country. So long as you can convince the general public in this country to the fact that the systems investigations are functioning transparently, efficiently, unbiasedly, I don't think we have to take one step further to convince international community or any other agency in order to satisfy them. What is important is that the conduct of these organizations, authorities, departments should be satisfactory in the eyes of the general public.
Now, you speak well of those matters, but if we go back to your own case, where you say that your portfolio was taken away from you in the face of your disability, your inability, and your dislike to be part of some form of tainted project process, namely the power plant at Weerakkody, they removed you. So where is the transparency there?
That is the question that all of us are faced with in this country. I believe it is time, of course, now, as opposed to yesterday or the last decade or the last year, people are advanced. People now understand what their rights should be, based on what they should be taking decisions. By the day, people are aware. So I hope in the future, at least, people will be all alarmed, or rather educated, cautious to elect people, elect a government that will not conduct in an unfair manner in the interest of the country, the future, and the general public.
And whilst we are on this subject of transparency, recent events from the Pandora Papers, for example, has brought about various information that some individuals who live in Sri Lanka and who have a connection to Sri Lanka have monies that are hidden in offshore companies and so on. That can't be very transparent, but what can...
Well, there is nothing that cannot be done. Best example is, I remember over 10 years ago, when we eradicated terrorism and when we used to meet Pakistani at various international forums, what they used to say, I still recollect, they used to tell me that Sri Lanka is a very lucky country. Sri Lanka has come out of the obstacle that they had, and Sri Lanka will have shattered. We have a corrupt military government. We will not be able to develop like your country. That is exactly what they used to tell us, tell me personally. But now you can see Imran Khan has done quite a lot within his 3 years, and he immediately decides to take action. So a country that did not have any hope, mainly due to corruption, mainly due to dictatorship, has come out of it, and now they're doing really well, as we understand. So there is nothing that cannot be done. I hope Sri Lanka will not be so unlucky. We will be able to do it if we have the will, if we have the courage, and if we have the commitment as a country and as the leaders of the country.
And on that note, let's go for a short break and look at this evening's primetime news headlines, and we'll see you on the other side of the break.
Newsfirst, Newsline with Faraz Shaukat.
And welcome back to Newsline Zoom. I'm in conversation with Member of Parliament, the SDP, Mr. Chandima Weerakkody. Now then, welcome back, Mr. Chandima Weerakkody. Can you tell me, please, what do you mean exactly, you know, when you say you lost your portfolio because you opposed the proposal on the table for the Kerawalipitiya power station? What do you mean by that? How did you get a call? Did you say, if you don't do this, I'm going to do something else? Tell us, go through the scenario, because the general public out there don't really know how these things are done.
In that particular instance, I remember I was in India negotiating, explaining Sri Lankan position, my position as the minister, which is very beneficial to Sri Lanka, and I opposed what was detrimental to Sri Lankan interest, in the presence of another minister and the deputy Sri Lankan deputy High Commissioner and the High Commissioner. There were ministers from India and Japan. So I did what is right, and I remember on my way back, I was not even given a business class seat. When I got into the flight, the flight was full, and they haven't even reserved a ticket seat for me. That is, to that extent, I was penalized. And after I came back, I was, of course, very firm on my position, because that my position is not my arbitrary decision. I had spoken to the experts in the ministry, the field. Based on their advice, I stood as a Sri Lankan. I stood as a person who was elected by the general public of Sri Lanka. And after a while, I was moved. And of course, there was this other issue relating to Trincomalee tank farm matters was another one. Yeah, I wanted part of it to CPC and develop. So based on those, it was decided to change me.
In retrospect, do you have any regrets that you didn't play ball with the ruling powers?
No, not at all. I'm very proud to say that I could do the right thing as expected by the people who voted for me, as expected by the citizens of this country. So with the fact that I lost my portfolio doesn't give me any hard feelings, because it was due to the fact that I tried to do the right thing on behalf of my country. That I lost it, I know.
And whilst they're checking how many minutes we've got left, let me ask you this question. Are you able to tell us who was behind that transaction?
Well, I mean, I don't have to names. Obviously, people know who was not the president that time, but the others.
And in which year was this again?
In 2017, I believe.
So the president would have been President Sirisena.
Yeah.
So you're clearing President Sirisena out of this.
Yeah, sir.
So it had to be somebody else in cabinet. Up front and open. Was the Prime Minister at the time, was he aware of this?
Naturally, he has to be aware. And there would have been certain others who were aware as well.
And you were not able to approach the Prime Minister and tell him?
No, I mean, why should I? I did the right thing. I still believe the position I took was the right position as far as the country is concerned. I openly said it. I said it in the cabinet. I put it down in writing and informed. So I have no regrets, and there was no reason for me to seek an appointment, go behind someone and explain matters.
And do you feel that this matter is worthy of a fit and proper investigation, so that if there has been some sort of departure from any due or a lack of service delivery by a minister, even a Prime Minister, then that is the option we need to follow, that we need to take legal action and hold people accountable ourselves?
Well, more than taking legal action, action must be taken by the general public, because the decision to elect governments is by the people. So governments and elected representatives by the people should be able to conduct themselves to the best satisfaction of the people. In countries that are developed and developing rapidly, you can see it happening. At least the majority of elected members conduct themselves that way. So I believe in Sri Lankan context, we must achieve such targets. Otherwise, however much action we try to take, we will not see any results, because the other side of the wheel will get elected once there is a change. So change will be just the other side of the coin, so long as people are not educated, or people are not responsible enough to elect people who can retain their trust, safeguard their trust, protect their trust.
I hear what you say, Chandima Weerakkody, but I want to go back to this and plow it through you again. And that is this. We all know how power can corrupt absolutely. And in the pursuit of retaining that power, quite frankly, nothing is any different today than it was under the Yapalani government. We had the incoming Yapalanistas who assured the Republic of Sri Lanka that we will prosecute wrongdoers, A, B, C, and etc. and etc. They came didn't do that. Instead, we had a rogue governor of the central bank who did all sorts of jolly things. It led to a presidential commission of inquiry, to court proceedings, and as of today, the Republic is still waiting. So I wonder how are we going to change the trajectory in this country when the mainstream political parties are both corrupt themselves?
That is exactly what I now during the past few years, top 10 were the hot topics, but nothing is done about top 10 nor anyone. So, I mean, that's why I said, rather than trying to take and talk about taking legal action against this side or that side, of course that should be done. It's the duty of and the responsibility of the police department and the attorney general's department and the judicial system to see that justice is done. But people don't have direct control over those departments or institutes. But the change can only be done by the people, because it is finally the people who will suffer if this country goes on like this. So it is up to the people to rally around and decide, at least in the future, that there will be a change in the governing patterns, systems, and governing teams in this country. So I believe the message should be effectively communicated to those who can understand in this country, to get together, educate the others, and decide to elect governments that are responsible, that will not let the expectations of the people.
Thank you for being so open, Chandima Weerakkody. But, again, I'm going to go on to this other thing here. We have had successive governments looking at all sorts of things. And, we had various tax amnesties and so on. But there are still individuals and corporates who are holding monies outside of this country. Now, some of these people, some of these companies, it's our land, it's our people. They pay them rather poorly. They live in line houses, 2 or 3 generations in the same room, 12 by 15. And, they're so proud of this boast that we export in one industry 300 million kilos. All that appears to be very nice. But most of these people hold their money outside. And regular tax amnesties are not usually done regularly. They're like one-off things just to rein it all in. But here, it's Sri Lanka's had 14 tax amnesties. 14, 1-4. So where's the change happening? If it is happening, I can't see it.
Well, that's especially the tax structures. The tax regime should be seriously looked into. How many Sri Lankans out of 22 million are taxpayers in the first place? It's, as I understand, less than 300,000. How many don't pay a single cent who can afford to pay taxes? How many poor people are penalized as a result of that? So it's not a magic, and the results can be expected only by implementing or installing systems and bringing in technology. These were discussed, taken up as slogans. People wanted a system change. People wanted artificial intelligence being brought into the systems, and nothing is seen happening. Is there a system for Inland Revenue, Customs, Excise Department, RMB? You can easily install a system without letting the humans to handle it. Then most of these, I don't say that all the issues can be resolved. But if you can install systems in those 4 sectors first, most of these issues can be resolved. There will be transparency, there will be efficiency. So why not we use technology? The way key to eradicate corruption is introduction of technology. Key to enhance efficiency. This is nothing. We have enough experts who can. We have enough experts who can prepare these systems. We have enough experts who can handle these systems. We have enough experts who can monitor, who can get into surveillance, who can advise, who can be as consultants. There will be people who will come forward to do their part freely to initiate these. Those who love this country. We have the expertise. We have the talent. But there is no initiation. There is no implementation. These are widely discussed at various forums, especially during elections. But it's not done. The moment it's initiated, Sri Lanka will become a winner. Sri Lanka is not a difficult problem. It's a small island. It's a country with 22 million, 23 million population. It's not easy. And majority of the people are intelligent. Majority of the people are disciplined, civilized. Our literacy rates are very high. Our IT literacy rates are very high. People are responsible with all that. And our health indicators are very high. So the ground and infrastructure is well in place. If we can do that, we be winners.
Whilst I hear what you say, and whilst I remain inspired by what you say, I must point out to you, Mr. Chandima Weerakkody, that although Sri Lanka has this very high literacy rate, I believe that at the end of the day, they are not educated enough to understand and appreciate that democracy is actually a two-way street. And we are constantly, the people are constantly being fooled by corrupt officials, not only in the cabinet of ministers or in the parliament, but also out there on the hustings at every election. When they come around, they basically mislead the public. They lead the public up the garden path, don't they?
Well, I must say Sri Lanka is a long enough democracy, but I have a feeling, I have a doubt as to whether Sri Lanka is a refined democracy. We need to be fine-tuned and refined. We Sri Lankans are people who value democracy. That's why we have had a continuous democratic governance since 1931. One of the oldest democracies. We have only that story to say, but when deciding, given the opportunity to universal franchise, we have not been taking right decisions. Majority of us are concerned. So therefore, it is up to the civil society, the media, those who can understand, those who are unbiased, those who love the country, those who are patriotic, to participate in a process to fine-tune the system, educate individuals who are ignorant, who can be misguided, who can be persuaded other ways, other means. If the day that it happens, Sri Lanka will start developing rapidly. If that can be done in a country like Pakistan, where the literacy rates are very poor, a country that has been under military government for a long time, a country that has been into military corruption in a big way, country that has had leaders who are corrupt, if they can change, if Pakistan can be changed, why not Sri Lanka can be changed within a matter of few months or years? It is something that can be done. So I would invite all those who can contribute towards that in their own individual personal way to do that. That is the duty that I believe now. During the time we had terrorism, the eradication of terrorism was number one. All of us contributed towards that. But now it is not that. Now there is no terrorism. We are living in a secure country. Now is our opportunity. We have to somehow create opportunity to develop this country, to take this country forward, to make this country a happy place, to make this country a place where there is law and order, which is above all of us. So we should get together towards that.
Chandima Weerakkody, it's been wonderful speaking to you, and it's been even more wonderful because you are, it matters to you, which is why you've been interviewed, you've agreed to be interviewed during a period when you are recovering from COVID-19. Chandima Weerakkody, I wish you a full and speedy recovery, and I do hope and pray that God will envelope you in his care. Thank you. And that's the way it was on Newsline Zoom. Take care, and as always, God bless you.
Newsfirst Newsline with Faraz Shaukat Ali.